feel like let's give people a little oasis here and there, you know.
You referred several times to having an archive, and I was wondering how much the accumulation and the organisation of that archive is a separate creative process to the filmmaking, and how the two things...
Right, well they're very much intertwined, because I often shoot without really having a set project in mind, and then things go into the archive, and then later I'll say, oh, you know, that might be useful for this, or I could make a project out of that, and then I augment it. But it's a very complicated business, because it's kind of a nightmare, frankly, because it's very, you know, it's a lot of stuff now, and it's expensive, and the formats, they change video formats now about every 7.5 minutes so that everybody can buy new machinery that, you know, and junk all the old ones, and you know, that kind of thing is nearly impossible to keep up with. So the archive has become you know, a burden as much as it is a pleasure, because I just can't, you know, I can't afford a proper archive the way that it should be, like, you know, temperature controlled and all that, and I can't afford.
Yeah, those guys from, was it Pisa, who were working in the with all the films?
Oh yeah, no, that's no, that's in Catania. That's the local porno guy. Yeah, well, he's got his hands full.
At least one of them.
At least one of them.
Sorry.
Oh my God. Cut that from the tape. Anyway, yeah, we should wrap this up so everybody, because it's another long, like the most kind of complex and dense one is the last one. So,
I just very finally,
I'm starting to feel really guilty.
Do they, when you look back at them, are they chaotic, or are they ordered? Is it like a series of set shots, or is it? Do you see the work in progress? Do you find your way with the camera?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but I mean, I gather a lot of material, and I try to be careful while I'm gathering it, and I have to kind of distill, because film is very expensive. So there's a whole, like, limitation, sometimes, you know, bordering on terror about, you know, not just shooting and shooting and shooting, and so I don't often like do, you know, 20 shots of the same thing. I very often do 1 or 2, and so that allows me, you know, to not have kind of endless amorphous rushes that I have to pick from a million versions of the same thing, if that's what you were getting.
That's exactly what I was.
Yeah, I don't often have that so much. I mean, occasionally there's an exception to any of these rules, and there's exceptions to the whole thing. I mean, I did a feature film that had some acting in it and some carefully written dialogue, and I'm fine with that, and I would love to do more of that. You know, I'm sort of proselytizing for the thing that I've been proselytizing about, because that's what you're looking at right now. But I don't really believe that that's the only way to make films, or even for me. But I do believe that it's the bulk of what I've done, because it's the bulk of what I could do, and I believe in, like, possible filmmaking rather than having, like, endless meetings to try to get something together that isn't possible. You know, so that's part of where I'm coming from tonight. But I often find myself kind of going into these, what you know, in Yiddish would be called a spiel, and then I think, you know, like, it's not all there is, even to what I believe, you know, what I do. So, coming to the end of the spiel. What else? Anything I can ask you? Anybody know good, cheap place to stay in London? Clean, reasonable? I'm looking for a place tomorrow. Suggestions? Welcome.
What's cheap?
I've spent much of my life asking myself that. Like, films, you know, falafels. What's cheap? No. I don't think there's any. I'm getting the impression that a cheap hotel in London is probably like a cheap hotel in New York. Like, If it was really cheap, there's probably a terrible reason for that. I don't know what cheap is in London. What is cheap in London?
Hostel.
Yeah, I'm getting a little old for the hostel experience. All right, anyway.
What are we about to see now?
We're going to see Lost Book Found, which is their sort of, that's my early epic.
Where did this story come from?
Lost Book Found?
Yeah.
Well, you just have to follow along and you'll learn. It tells you where it came from. It came from my first job in New York as a pushcart vendor.
It was autobiographical, because I've seen
Well,
it a few times and I wasn't sure. If
Parts
was
of it
you.
are, I mean, I guess I might as well say this. This is something I shouldn't be saying until afterwards. Yeah, it's largely autobiographical, but it's not all autobiographical, and it became very clear to me in making it that I just didn't want it to be about me. So I shifted some things. Like, I didn't sell peanuts, I sold Italian ices, and I didn't sell them in Midtown, I sold them on Canal Street, which is downtown, and I shifted other things as well, because it wasn't about that. So I'll just say that much. Yeah. All right. Lost Book Found. All right. Be strong.